and it encourages hard work, training, and discipline. I have been the grateful recipient of fencing's benefit for over 30 years. As an A-rated competitor, a referee, and as a coach, I have worked to bring fencing's benefits to all Americans. Although it was adopted before I joined the board, USA Fencing's transgender participation policy had that same goal. We recognize, however, that gender participation in sports is a complex topic and requires consideration of numerous viewpoints. Considerations of safety and fairness are paramount. I understand that in developing its transgender participation policy, USA Fencing drew on its long experience with mixed gender competition, where men and women have safely and fairly competed against each other for decades. USA Fencing also consulted the practices and policies of other NGBs, as well as those of the IOC, the USOPC, and Fencing's International Federation, known as the FIE. The IOC and FIE policies were particularly important. As an NGB, USA Fencing is governed by the Ted Stevens Act, which forbids NGBs from adopting eligibility criteria that are more strict than those of the Sports International Federation. The FIE does not ban transgender participation. As a result, I understand that the consensus among NGBs, including USA Fencing, is that a ban on transgender participation could violate the Ted Stevens Act. As Chairwoman Green pointed out, I've been a vocal advocate for transgender participation in fencing. Those are my own personal views. My actions as chair, however, are guided by the best interests of the organization and take consideration of the diverse viewpoints held by our members. I want to emphasize USA Fencing's commitment to safety and fairness. I know that in other sports, some athletes have been severely injured in competition involving transgender athletes. Any significant injury in competition is a tragedy, and my heart goes out to athletes like Ms. McNabb who have suffered such injuries. But thankfully, that hasn't been our experience in fencing. USA Fencing has long sponsored mixed gender competition where men and women compete against each other. Those bouts show that mixed gender competition, in fencing at least, does not pose any significant safety risks above and beyond single gender fencing competition. The same is true for fencing involving transgender participation. Additionally, while some attributes more common in men, such as height and physical strength, can certainly confer an advantage in a fencing bout, women more commonly exhibit other advantageous traits such as flexibility and agility. Ultimately, fencing is a sport of strategy and technique. Those elements will most frequently determine who prevails. And when it comes to strategy and technique, neither sex has any inherent advantage. Transgender status thus doesn't appear to confer any inherent advantage over a cisgender fencer. Cisgender women have beaten transgender women in 55% of the bouts, for which USA Fencing has data. I was disappointed to learn that following the Cherry Blossom tournament last month, Ms. Turner has decided to take a break from fencing. I hope she will reconsider. To be clear, USA Fencing has not banned Ms. Turner. She remains free to enter tournaments and free to compete. Regardless, the response to Ms. Turner's bout underscores the importance of this issue and the need for reasoned discussion. USA Fencing welcomes that discussion. There can never be too much conversation about how to make our sport better. And so I want to be clear that if the law, research, or international consensus changes, USA Fencing is prepared to amend its participation requirements. We have been proactive in this area. After months of discussion, USA Fencing recently adopted a contingent transgender participation policy that will go into effect if the law or regulations change. I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
I now recognize Ms. Goss-Graves for her opening statement.
Good afternoon, Chair Green, Ranking Member Stansberry, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Fatima Goss-Graves, and I'm President and CEO at the National Women's Law Center. We've been around since 1972, when Title IX was first enacted, and we've been working to create equal opportunity for women and girls in sports and in society ever since. Women and girls face many obstacles to equal opportunity in sports: fewer financial resources than men's programs, worse facilities, endemic sexual abuse, and student athletes facing these persistent inequities are among the more than 12,000 people who have complained about discrimination in school, but who actually really can't pursue justice because the Trump administration has laid off half the staff whose jobs at the Department of Education it was to respond to these complaints. Students, including disabled kids, survivors of campus sexual assault, and other forms of discrimination, are now basically in a situation where their complaints are being warehoused. So for over 50 years, the National Women's Law Center has been fighting for equality and will continue to fight until every girl has the same chance to play as everyone else. And as an expert on women's rights in sports and in society, I want to be clear here. Transgender women do not pose a threat to women's sports. Transgender women belong in sports. And I'm here because I care about all women and girls in sport. And I know that bullying trans kids and creating panic about the existence of trans people will not make us safer. It won't solve any of the problems that I named about inequity in sports. And the fixation on harming trans kids, it will not fix the problems of the American people. Because at the National Women's Law Center, we hear from people every day about the real problems that they are facing. They're concerned about reproductive freedom. They're struggling to put food on the table. They're agonizing about how to care for aging loved ones. Hardworking folks around the country, from Texas to Georgia to Tennessee to California, we hear from folks who are worried that there is a budget in this Congress that would demolish programs like SNAP, Head Start, Medicaid, and generally make their lives harder. And they're looking for an end to attacks on schools, on health care, child care, on workplace safety. Instead, over the last few years, there has been this nonstop effort to convince the public that including transgender women in sports harms cisgender women and harms all people in society. But anti-trans sports bans, they actually harm all women. And I have just a few examples that I want to name. For example, denying trans kids the chance to find teammates who have their back, that's harmful. Or harassing Black and brown women and girls for not being, feminine enough, that's harmful. School officials secretly investigating girls' gender to make sure that they are feminine enough to play, that is harmful and that is dangerous. And yes, those things are already happening. For example, after Utah passed a trans sports ban, a state school board member posted a picture of a high school student athlete on social media, suggesting that she was transgender. She was not. But she faced such intense cyberbullying and threats to herself and to her family, they had to actually get police protection. So as president and CEO of the National Women's Law Center, it could not be more clear to me. Anti-trans bans, they hurt all women. They're wrong. And we won't let them be enacted in the name of protecting women, because they don't protect women. They harm us all. And it's discrimination, period. And if the subcommittee wants to defend women, the National Women's Law Center definitely has ideas about that, ideas that will actually help. Ideas that will combat the real threats to women and girls' safety and equality today. Trans women in sports, it's just not one of them. Thank you.
We will now begin the 5-minute question period of the hearing. I would like to remind the members that Mr. Lefelt is here under a duly issued subpoena to answer questions at today's hearing, after refusing to appear voluntarily. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions. No one is here today to harm transgenders. We are here to defend girls and women, and we are here to defend Title IX and to uphold President Trump's executive order that all biological males stay out of girls' and women's sports. Here displayed behind me is the post that Mr. Lefelt put up. Mr. Lefelt came in here today saying that this is game day. You're right, Mr. Lefelt, this is game day. Under the Ted Stevens Act, USA Fencing and other national governing bodies that are authorized to oversee individual sports on a national level have a certain obligation. One such duty is to provide support and encouragement for participation by women, where separate programs for male and female athletes are conducted on a national basis. Another statutory duty is to promote a safe environment in sports that is free from abuse of any amateur athlete, including emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Mr. Lefelt, as the board chair of USA Fencing, surely you are aware of these legal requirements. That means you believe that forcing a woman to compete against a biological man promotes a safe environment that is free from emotional abuse. Is that correct?
One moment. A point of order, please, Madam Chair.
You're not. Okay,
Madam Chair, I have a point of order. The document that you have up behind you is a misrepresentation of the actual post. It appears that you're trying to misrepresent a witness here who you use subpoena powers against.
This is not, Ms. Stansbury. Ms. Stansbury, this is not a point of order.
The actual picture.
Ms. Stansbury, you're not recognized. Ms. Stansbury, you're not recognized. Ms. Stansbury, you are not recognized.
Madam Chairwoman,
you are not. This is not a point of order, Ms. Stansbury. This is not a point of order.
What this committee does, you are misrepresenting the witnesses. You are misrepresenting policy. You are misrepresenting.
Ms. Stansbury, you're not recognized. You're not recognized. That's not a point of order. You're abusing the rules of this committee. This is the post of Mr. Lefelt that he posted himself on his own social media. And that's exactly why we have it displayed here today, because Mr. Lefelt believes that he can take away the opportunities for women to compete in USA Fencing, and he thinks this is game day to defend biological men. Now, we're going to return to my time as chair of this committee. Ms. Turner, refusing to compete against a man cost you a 12-month probation. Did you feel you were in a safe environment, free from abuse, when you were told you must compete against a man in an all-out competition?
No.
No, that wasn't free from emotional abuse. Ms. McNabb, when a biological man spiked a ball into your head, were you free from physical or emotional abuse?
I was not.
Ms. McNabb, did you feel you were placed in a safe environment when you faced a biological male in a girls' volleyball game?
No, I did not feel safe.
Ms. Turner, were you safe when you were forced to go up against a biological male in your sport?
No, I was not.
Mr. Lefelt, do you think your perception of what constitutes a safe environment for women is more valid than that of a woman testifying here today?
Congresswoman, thank you for your question. There was a study that was published in 2010 regarding the safety of sports in the Olympic movement. There were 51 sports that were assessed as part of that study.
That's a yes or no question, Mr. Lefelt. Is that your perception? You're sitting next to a young woman who received a brain injury from a biological male. Is it safe to compete against biological males? Yes or no, Mr. Lefelt?
What happened to Ms.
Yes or no?
What happened to Ms. McNabb
I'll take that as a no. Mr. Lefelt, do you think forcing a woman to change in front of a man in a locker room is abusive? Yes or no?
Congresswoman, I'm not sure I
Do
follow
you
the
want your
question.
daughter to change in front of biological men in locker rooms? Yes or no?
My daughter isn't really something that should be part of this hearing, respectfully.
If you're not a quick no on that, we're going to take that as a no. We're going to switch gears to USA Fencing site selection policy. You're the chair of USA Fencing. You should be familiar. Mr. Lefelt, what does abortion have to do with fencing?
Congresswoman, that policy was passed before I got on the board. However, when
you're the chair of the board now, what does abortion have to do with fencing, Mr. Lefelt?
I'm on the board, you're correct, and I offered an amendment to that policy back in December, Congresswoman, that allowed for more flexibility at the
What,
city
to
level.
get an abortion while you're at fencing competitions? I
And
don't
it
think
also
so.
allowed for better convenience. So we enhanced the policy
More
under my
convenience to
leadership on the
Planned
board.
Parenthood centers. Mr. Lefelt, why does USA Fencing states abortion policies and LGBTQ policies in its site selection process to determine where tournaments are held? That's part of your site selection process, is abortion availability and states and cities that are friendly to LGBTQ policies. How is that part of USA Fencing?
Congresswoman, we try to have tournaments in sites that are safe for all of our members, period.
So you don't think red states are safe for fencing athletes?
Red states are absolutely safe, and we regularly host tournaments there, including Texas, Ohio, Missouri.
No, your site selection policies are based on abortion availability and LGBTQ availability, not on fencing, not on your sport. Now let's go a little bit further with this.
Madam Chairwoman, your time has expired.
You're not recognized, Ms. Crockett. Mr. Lefelt, you wrote a blog post where you said that one day your daughter
Madam
might
Chair, on a point of
compete-
order.
This is my time, and I'm the chair of the committee.
No, that was your time. Your time is over, and now we're asking,
The chair has discretion to assign
I've
time,
lost
and you know
time.
it, sir.
I have lost
as long as
time.
we have that understanding, that's fine.
I've lost time. for
I
all
yield
this
2.5 minutes to the chair lady.
Mr. Lefelt, you wrote a blog post where you said that one day your daughter might compete against a transgender woman, a biological man. You said that if she did, you might win or she might lose. But whatever the result, you hope she doesn't care about the outcome, because the important thing is that both she and her opponent enjoy the match. That's what you wrote in your little trans manifesto. But you came here today to win. And you came here today to defeat women in their own sport. So as you stand here before this committee today, you are a man that would tell your daughter to lose and enjoy it to a biological man. My time has expired, and with that, I recognize Ms. Stansbury to defend all the trans.
Point of order. Out of curiosity, is the chairwoman allowed to editorialize before every speaker on the Democratic side speaks, or is that part of her time, which we know that she went over?
It's not a point of order. You're taking Ms. Stansbury's time. I know you're trying to be chair of oversight, but Ms. Stansbury is the ranking member.
Chair would be better on this side. I do agree with that.
It's Ms. Stansbury's time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you can see, this is a hearing full of performance artists, not legislators. To our witnesses and guests, I do appreciate you coming today, but this is not the venue for this conversation, and our colleagues know that across the aisle. That is part of why the distraction of the gaveling and the yelling and the performance art is happening here today, because this is not an oversight hearing. This is not what the jurisdiction of the Oversight Committee is. And the chairman and the chairwoman both know that. And they both know that a little over 100 days ago, when Republicans were clamoring to show Donald Trump and Elon Musk that they were going to carry their water here in Congress, they created this subcommittee to do Elon Musk's bidding. But now that he is so unpopular, that 2/3 of Americans are opposed to Doge and Elon Musk, the honeymoon is over, my friends. And so what are they doing with the Doge subcommittee? They're bullying trans kids. They're talking about things that have absolutely nothing to do with government oversight or efficiency or the economy or the reality that Donald Trump is tanking the economy and the reality that Americans are pissed as hell and are marching in the streets. And they're turning the Doge subcommittee into, apparently now, a fencing oversight committee. Welcome. We're not even going to call it the Doge subcommittee anymore. This is called the Fencing Oversight Committee. Welcome to the Fencing Oversight Committee. But in reality, we know this is all about bullying trans kids, as they are literally over on the floor debating renaming the Gulf of Mexico this week, because they have no real agenda other than tanking the economy, taking away health care, taking away food out of the mouths of children, and basically distracting the American people while they prepared the largest tax break for billionaires ever in the history of this country. But it's not enough to just obsessively talk and think about trans people, which obviously are living rent-free in their minds. Donald Trump has put into place over a dozen executive orders and actions bullying trans people. Here this committee is trying to take their own punch. They're trying to keep trans people from using bathrooms inside the Capitol. I mean, all of this is part of their regular playbook. Do really bad, evil things, and then distract the American people by doing ridiculous things in public spaces like this. So I am very grateful to Ms. Goss-Graves for being here to break through the noise, to talk about real issues that are affecting our communities, because among the things that affect women, girls, all people are the cuts to health care, the cuts to education, the cuts to vital programs that our people depend on. But what I think is so important is to highlight the ways in which using public spaces like this to bully trans people creates a lack of safety for the LGBTQ plus community. And so, Ms. Goss-Graves, can you talk about how exactly what's happening here today normalizes hate and how that translates into violence and hate against the LGBTQ plus community?
You know, this is exactly my deep worry. Over the last couple of years, we have seen in states around the country and now in this body and from the president using government to attack some of our most vulnerable people. And the hateful rhetoric translates to violence. It's trans young people who are experiencing violence in school. And it also means that we have seen an increase in incidents of suicide. So when I think about young people today who may be tuning in, I want to reaffirm that their existence is okay and that they are supported. But I also want to say very, very clearly, even though people have been spun up in this frenzy that all the problems in the world are apparently now caused by trans folks existing, that is simply not true. And if we have a very serious and concerted effort to address rising costs, to address access to health care, to address the experiences that people are having in this country who are begging for help, this body actually could be doing that. In an oversight way, even, it would be especially important to hear this body do that so that we could have a conversation around what has the impact been for people in this country, for women and girls, because of DOGE. Those are the things I hear about all the time.
Yes, thank you very much. And I also
The gentlelady's time has expired.
I also want to acknowledge your
The gentlelady's time has expired. I now recognize
Chair, do we not have a-
Ms.
You
McLean
spoke for over
from
a minute
Michigan.
more
Point of
than
order.
your allocated
You
time.
took a minute of my time, wasting my time on a non-point of order. The gentlelady's
Madam
time has
Chair, the
expired. I
clock
now
was
recognize
not running during the
Ms.
point
McLean
of order.
from
Point of
Your
Michigan.
time was not wasted. And to the trans
I now
community,
recognize
we
Ms. McLean
stand
from-
with you, with the LGBTQ plus community. We stand with you, and you can
Madam
break
Chair.
my eardrums all you want, Madam Chair, but we stand with the LGBTQ plus community, and you can gavel me till
Order. This
cows come
hearing
home
will
and it
come to
won't
order.
stop it.
This hearing will come to order.
Madam Chair, I have a
This
question.
hearing will come to order.
Madam Chair, I
This
just-
hearing will come to order. I now
a
recognize
point of order.
Ms. McLean
I
from
just
Michigan.
have a point of order.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me tell you,
Madam Chair, I
Yeah.
had a
What's your
point of order. Could we just have the timekeeper, log the time between both the Democrats and Republicans, and then we rebalance them so that we each have equal time? That's pretty basic.
We will consider that. Thank you.
No,
But stop. No.
That's-
You took
that's-
a minute of my time.
that's
All
not a
right, okay.
suggestion. Those are the
Enough,
rules.
Enough.
No.
You're wasting your
Hey,
time.
look,
That's
either,
not.
either we go
We
by
are
the rules
keeping
or
equal
we're
time.
out of here.
We're keeping equal time.
The door's
okay.
open.
Ms.
All right.
McLean from Michigan is now recognized.
thank you, Madam Chair. Let me tell you what I'm here for. I'm here to protect women and girls. And for all of you young women and girls watching today, I hear you. I hear your stories. I hear your bullying stories. I hear your uncomfortableness. Because you see, sometimes young women and girls get trampled over. But let me tell you what I'm here for. I'm here as a mother and as a coach and as an athlete to stand up for the rights of women and especially young girls. That's what I'm here for. And in 1972, Title IX of the Education Amendments prohibits gender discrimination in all educational programs receiving federal funds. And I'm here today because women have had to fight for every God-given right, and I'll be damned if we're going to go back on that. When biological men invade women's spaces, our rights are violated, and our spaces are violated. Now, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle constantly talk about following the science, but this makes it clear that this is merely a disingenuous slogan. So let's follow the science for a moment. Not opinions, but science. So, Ms. Graves, what is the average difference in skeletal muscle between biological men and biological women?
So I'm definitely not a scientist, but I can tell you about the studies that have been done looking at transgender athletes, cisgender athletes.
It's a great answer to a question I didn't ask, so perhaps I can help you.
So the answer, I think where you're trying to go is there an inherent
Is there a biological difference between men and women?
in all contexts? And the answer is no.
Okay,
right now.
Okay.
The answer is no.
Okay, let
And
me
so
educate
And
you.
the reason
Okay,
that I can
reclaiming
tell
my
you that
time.
the answer is no is because UCLA has studied this. They did a study of
The gentlewoman's reclaimed her time. Ms. McLean's recognized.
So I'll educate you. I'll tell you, men have 30 to 40% more skeletal muscle than biological women. That's not right. That's not wrong. That just is what it is. I was going to ask you what is the difference in upper body strength, but I don't think you know that either. So I'll answer that question for you as well. Biological men exhibit 20 to 50% greater upper body strength, and 25 to 30% lower body strength than biological women. That's just the science. Ms. Graves, you stated your organization's mission is to ensure safety and opportunity for all girls. Was Peyton McNabb safe on September 1st of 2022?
It sounds like she definitely wasn't. And
Thank
what happened
you.
to her was tragic. I would argue, though,
Thank
that the answer is to ensure that people can't spike volleyballs into people's heads. That seems unsafe.
Thank you for your answer,
spiking
Ms.
the ball.
Graves. So I will reclaim my time on that. So here's the inherent problem. If I would say I'm a 6'2" blonde supermodel, you agree with that statement? I know my husband does, but does that make it true?
I'm not sure how tall you are because you're sitting down, but I'm assuming you're not blonde.
Look like a 6'2" blonde supermodel?
No.
Okay. But I identify as one. Okay? Just because I identify as one doesn't make it true, but let's go ahead and say for a moment it's true. The issue that I have for the young girls is you can live in your reality. You can live in your reality. But when your reality intrudes on my safety and puts another person at harm or in harm's way, that's when I have a problem with it. When you want to live in your distorted reality, you can do that. But that doesn't mean everybody else has to do that either. Because I will ask you one other question. Can a 43-year-old man identify as a 13-year-old boy? Ms. Graves?
Can a
43-year-old man live in his reality of identifying as a 13-year-old boy?
So this question makes me understand that you...
No, this question is a question that you need to answer that you refuse. If we're going to be who we want to be, can a 43-year-old man identify as a 13-year-old boy?
The witness can answer, but the gentlelady's time's expired.
So here's the thing. It is
It's a
absolutely.
yes or no.
So I'm hoping that some people are watching, and so that's why I'm trying to provide some.
There's the gentlelady's time's expired. This is a yes or no question.
Okay. I would have loved to give a fuller answer. Here is my answer to you. The answer is no, that an adult can't be a child.
Why they identify as
Yeah.
one?
Okay, thank you
And
very
there
much.
is- but
Thank
if
you
you'd
for
like me to
answering the
provide
question.
a
The gentlelady